Hey everyone, we're working hard to get our first 1,000 subscribers, sign up and you won't regret it. My phone looked like it was bleeding. 25 missed calls. Same name. Same photo. The woman who used to text me heart emojis like they were oxygen. And there I was, barefoot, standing in warm sand on a beach in Hawaii, watching the tide slide in like it had nowhere else to be. Most people would say I should have answered. Most people didn't know what I knew. I'd come to Hawaii with a single carry-on, a calm face, and a secret that sat in my chest like a smooth stone, heavy, quiet, impossible to ignore. The first missed call came when I was still in the airport, waiting for my coffee. The second one came as I boarded. By the time we hit cruising altitude, the calls became a storm. And I let them ring. Not because I was cruel. Because I was finally done being stupid. A week earlier, I'd been the guy who believed in rough patches. The guy who blamed late replies on stress. The guy who ignored that her phone always faced down, that she started going for walks at odd hours, that she laughed at messages and then tucked the screen away like it was something dirty. We'd been together for years. Married for 2. Her name was Vanessa. Mine is Dylan. We weren't the couple who posted everything online. We weren't perfect, but we were stable. That's what I told myself. And then stability turned out to be a costume. It started with something small, so small I almost didn't notice it. A charge on our credit card for a restaurant we'd never gone to together. It was a place downtown. Expensive. The kind of place you don't accidentally end up at. When I asked about it, she shrugged it off like it was boring. She said it was a work dinner. She said her team had celebrated a project. Her tone wasn't defensive. It was worse than defensive. It was casual. Like I wasn't worth the effort of a lie with details. I let it go, because I was trained to. Because I didn't want to be the jealous husband. Because I'd been taught that trust is what mature people do. That night, she fell asleep fast. I lay there listening to her breathing, staring at the ceiling, telling myself I was paranoid. Then her phone buzzed. Once. Twice. 3 times. She didn't move. Her hand didn't twitch. She stayed asleep like she wasn't worried about anything in the world. That's what gave me permission. I didn't grab her phone like I was hunting. I grabbed it like I was checking the time. Like it didn't matter. But my fingers knew her passcode. Of course they did. And there it was, one message thread that wasn't saved under a name. Just a number. The conversation was short. Too clean. Like someone had been pruning it. A few lines, careful and coded, the kind of thing people write when they think they're smart. And then one line that wasn't coded at all. Something about last night and how close it was. My throat went tight so fast it felt physical. I scrolled up. Nothing. Like the history had been burned. And then I saw what actually mattered. The little photo icon in the corner, the one that meant there were images. My hand hesitated. My brain tried one last time to protect me. I tapped it anyway. I won't describe the picture in detail. I don't need to. I don't want to. The outline of it is enough. It was Vanessa. It was a man. It was intimate enough that there was no misunderstanding. And the man was someone I knew. Someone I'd invited into my life. Someone I'd called a friend without thinking twice. His name was Matt. Matt wasn't a stranger. He wasn't some faceless guy from a bar. He was the guy who'd been at my wedding, smiling in photos, clinking glasses, hugging my mother like he belonged there. He was the guy who brought over beer on Sundays and talked about football and told me I was lucky. Lucky. I stared at the screen until it blurred, not because I cried, but because my eyes stopped cooperating. Then I did something I didn't recognize as myself. I took my own phone. I took screenshots. I forwarded them to a private email Vanessa didn't know existed. I saved them to a cloud account under a folder name that would never attract attention. Then I put her phone back exactly where it was, down to the angle. I lay back down. I listened to her breathe. And I didn't wake her up. Because a confrontation would have been about emotion. And what I needed now was structure. The next day, I moved through my life like a man acting out a script. I went to work. I answered emails. I sat in meetings. I nodded at people's jokes. I also did something else, quietly. Matt worked with me. Not in the same department, but in the same building. He had access to things he shouldn't have had access to, because I'd vouched for him. Because I'd pulled him into projects. Because I trusted him. That trust had been a key. So I started looking. Not at their messages. Not at her phone. At our accounts. At our calendar. At my company's internal logs. I didn't do it like a spy. I did it like a tired man who suddenly realized his house might already be on fire. A few oddities jumped out fast, little anomalies that didn't fit. Payments scheduled earlier than normal. A vendor invoice that looked rounded, too neat. A travel receipt with Matt's name attached to a client trip I'd been told he never went on. Nothing conclusive. but enough to make my stomach go cold. That weekend, Vanessa told me she needed to visit her sister. She kissed me quickly, grabbed her bag, and left. The moment her car disappeared, I walked into my office at home, shut the door, and pulled up a document I hadn't used in a year, contact info for a lawyer a friend once recommended. I called. I didn't leave a dramatic message. I asked for an appointment. On Monday, I sat across from a woman named Erin, who looked like she'd seen every version of betrayal a person could bring into a room. I didn't show her the pictures first. I showed her the financial anomalies. Then I showed her the screenshots. She didn't gasp. She didn't judge. She just got precise. She told me what I could do. What I couldn't. What not to say. What not to delete. How to protect myself in a divorce. And then she asked one question that changed the shape of everything. Do you think this is only an affair? I stared at her, and my silence answered for me. Because I'd started to think the same thing. Erin told me something else, something practical, unemotional. If there's financial misconduct tied to your business, you want to separate that from the marriage as cleanly as possible. Quietly. Quietly. That word felt like a weapon. That night, Vanessa came home smelling like perfume that wasn't hers. She kissed me again. Longer this time. Like guilt had made her try harder. And I let her. Because the next morning, while she was in the shower, I booked a one-way ticket to Honolulu. I didn't tell her right away. I waited until she was dressed and rushing out the door. I said, casually, like it was an afterthought, I'm going to take a few days. I need to clear my head. Her face did something fast, ugly, and brief. Then she covered it with concern. She asked where. I said, Hawaii. And that's when her phone started buzzing on the kitchen counter. Not mine. Hers. A call. Then another. Then another. I watched her glance down at the screen like it was a landmine. She flipped it over. Too quickly. And I realized something, she hadn't expected me to leave. Not now. Not suddenly. She'd built a plan, and I'd stepped off the line she thought I was stuck on. I packed calmly. I kissed her goodbye. She asked me to text when I landed. I promised I would. Then, at the airport, I did the first real move of my revenge. I didn't just block her. I changed everything. New passwords. New recovery emails. Two-factor authentication routed to a phone number she didn't know existed. Bank alerts switched to my device only. My social accounts logged out of every session. Shared cloud storage separated and locked. Even the smart lock on our front door, reset. I did it all in one sitting, sipping airport coffee like it was a normal Tuesday. And when my plane lifted off, I looked down at the shrinking city and felt something I hadn't felt in weeks. Relief. Because the truth was, I wasn't escaping. I was positioning myself. When I landed in Hawaii, I turned my phone on. That's when I saw it. 25 missed calls from Vanessa. And a voicemail from Matt. Just one. No words displayed, just the little icon that meant he'd left a message. I stared at his name until my thumb moved on its own. I hit play. And the moment I heard his voice, calm and clipped like he was trying not to panic, I knew I'd been right. This wasn't just an affair. This was something else. Something bigger. And I was standing on a beach, thousands of miles away, exactly where I needed to be. Because the next step wasn't heartbreak. It was strategy. Matt's voicemail was short. Not angry. Not romantic. Not even apologetic. Just urgent. He said my name once, like a warning. Then he said he needed to talk right now. Then he said something that didn't make sense until later. I can fix this, but you can't lock me out. Call me back. Lock him out. He didn't mean emotionally. He meant access. I didn't call him. Instead, I walked to the shoreline and let the water wash over my ankles. I forced my breathing to slow down. I watched a kid build a sandcastle like the world had never lied to anyone. Then I did the most important thing I'd learned in the last week. I let the evidence come to me. Back on the hotel balcony, I opened my laptop and logged into the new email address Erin had told me to use for anything legal. There was already a message waiting. From Erin. Subject line, immediate, business protection steps. Inside was a list. Tight. Clear. I followed it. I contacted my accountant, Raphael, and scheduled an urgent audit review under the guise of year-end cleanup. I didn't mention Vanessa. I didn't mention Matt. I just asked for irregularities. I also messaged my IT director, Sonia, someone I trusted because she didn't care about personal drama, only systems. I asked her for access logs. Vendor changes. Account permissions. Anything unusual in the past 6 months. And then I waited. Meanwhile, the calls kept coming. Vanessa called like a person drowning, not like a wife worried about her husband. And that difference mattered. She tried FaceTime. She tried WhatsApp. She tried Instagram. Each attempt hit a wall. Because I'd already cut the wires. At first, I expected rage. Instead, she sent an email from her work account. Subject line, please answer. No, I love you. No, are you okay? Just control. And that's when my brain clicked into a cold understanding that hurt more than the pictures ever could. She wasn't panicking because she missed me. She was panicking because she couldn't reach something through me anymore. I spent the first day in Hawaii doing normal things, shaved ice, a long walk, sitting on the beach as the sun went down. But it didn't feel like a vacation. It felt like the eye of a storm where I could hear the wind forming in the distance. That night, Sonia sent a file. A simple spreadsheet export. Permissions and changes. And there it was, Matt's account had been elevated twice over the last few months. Not by me. By someone using admin credentials from a device that pinged from our home IP. Vanessa. My wife had been using my home network to help him access corporate systems. I stared at that line until it didn't look real. Then I felt my hands start shaking, not from sadness, but from anger so clean it almost felt clarifying. This wasn't a man seducing my wife. This was two people using me. Sonia followed up with another note. Also, someone created a forwarding rule on your work email last month. It sent copies of certain vendor and finance emails to an external address. I removed it. External address. I asked for the address. She sent it. It wasn't Matt's. It was a Gmail handle I didn't recognize. But the name embedded in it made my mouth go dry. It included Vanessa's maiden name. My wife had been siphoning my work communications. I didn't throw anything. I didn't yell. I just saved the file. And I forwarded it to Aaron. The next morning, Raphael called. He didn't sound like a guy who found a small bookkeeping error. He sounded like a guy who just stepped on a hidden wire. He said he needed to ask me something directly. He asked if I'd authorized vendor payments to a consulting company called Blue Mesa Strategies. I had never heard of Blue Mesa Strategies in my life. Raphael told me the payments weren't huge individually, just consistent. Small enough to slide under most people's radar. But over time? Over time, it became a number that made my throat tighten again, for a different reason. Because it was more than an affair. It was theft. He asked if the company did any real work. I said no. He told me he dug into the vendor registration and bank routing. The vendor contact listed was a person named M. Calder. Matt's last name was Calder. I sat down on the edge of the hotel bed like someone had pushed me. Raphael kept talking. He said the vendor's address was a mailbox rental. He said the initial approval for the vendor wasn't from my office. It came from an account that had been used from my home network. Again. Vanessa. I thanked him. I ended the call. Then I stared out at the ocean and realized something strange. I didn't feel like a broken husband. I felt like a man who'd been targeted. And that meant this wasn't going to end with a screaming fight and a dramatic breakup. It was going to end with consequences. Erin called me later that day. She told me not to confront them yet. She told me to let the documentation pile up. Let them get comfortable. Let them make mistakes. She also told me something that sounded almost ridiculous until I understood the chessboard. You being in Hawaii is good. It creates a clean timeline. It also makes them more likely to act recklessly. Recklessly. Like calling me 25 times. Like leaving a voicemail. Like showing their panic. That evening, I got a text from an unknown number. Just 4 words. Where are you, man? Matt. New number. He was circling the block because he couldn't get inside the house anymore. And then another text came, right after. This one from Vanessa. Also a new number. Also short. Also revealing. Please stop. We can explain. We. Not I. Not me. We. I didn't respond to either. Instead, I went for a walk. I let the humid air fill my lungs. I watched couples holding hands, laughing, posing for pictures. And I felt a grim kind of gratitude. Because if I'd stayed home, I might have reacted emotionally. I might have shouted. I might have given them warning. But from here, with the ocean in front of me and thousands of miles between us, I could think. That night, Erin emailed again. Subject line, next steps, legal plus business. She had already coordinated with someone else, an investigator who specialized in corporate fraud. His name was Cole. Cole wasn't dramatic. He didn't talk like a movie. He talked like a man who lived in facts. He told me what he needed, documents, access logs, vendor histories, screenshots, any proof of the affair that demonstrated motive and relationship. He also told me something that made my stomach drop in a new way. If they've been stealing through a vendor, they might try to cover it by moving money quickly once they sense the door closing. That's when I remembered the missed calls. The desperation. The, you can't lock me out. They didn't want to talk because they felt guilty. They wanted to talk because something was happening, something urgent, and I was the only thing standing between them and a clean getaway. So I did the next move. I called Sonia. I asked her to put a silent hold on any new vendor approvals, any payment changes, any attempts to add new bank routing info. No notification. No warning. Just a trap. She agreed. Then I called Raphael and asked him to flag any unusual transfers or urgent invoice pushes. He agreed too. The net tightened while I sat under a palm tree like I was on vacation. By midnight, my phone lit up again. A new email. From Vanessa. This one wasn't begging. This one was sharp. Subject line, "You're making a mistake." Inside, one line. "If you don't come home tomorrow, you'll regret it." I stared at the screen, and for the first time since this started, I smiled. Because that wasn't a wife talking. That was a person who realized the game wasn't going her way. And if she was threatening me, it meant she was ready to do something stupid. I set the phone down. I looked out at the dark water. And I understood what the real revenge was going to be. Not the trip. Not the blocked accounts. Not the silence. The real revenge was going to be letting them think they still had a chance, right up until the moment the doors closed. Because the next morning, Sonia sent me a message with one sentence that made my pulse spike. "They tried to change the vendor bank routing at 2:13 a.m. from your home IP. Vanessa and Matt were moving. And now I knew exactly what they were trying to do. When someone tries to change bank routing at 2:13 in the morning, they're not doing work. They're doing damage control." I forwarded Sonia's message to Aaron and Cole. Cole replied first. "Good. Let's document. Don't block their attempt yet, log it, then stop it. Stop it. Not confront. Not accuse. Stop it quietly." I made coffee in my hotel room and watched the sunrise like I was a normal guy on a normal trip. Then I opened my laptop and did something I never thought I'd do in my own marriage. I mapped out my wife's next move. Because I knew her patterns. Vanessa was controlled when things were controlled. But when she felt cornered, she got reckless. In the past, that recklessness showed up in small ways, snapping at a waitress, picking a fight over nothing, calling her mother for backup. Now, it was going to show up in bigger ways. And I was right. At 9:06 a.m. Hawaii time, Erin called. She said Cole's investigator had pulled more background on Blue Mesa Strategies. It wasn't just a fake vendor. It had been used in 2 other cases, same structure, different names. And Matt's name appeared in connection with one of them. Not as a defendant. As a consultant. A guy who'd been questioned. A guy who'd walked away. He'd done this before. Which meant I wasn't his first betrayal. I was his next target. Erin told me to stay calm and do exactly what we planned. She asked me if I felt safe. I almost laughed at that, sitting in a hotel with an ocean view. But then she said something that made me stop. Vanessa might try to spin this publicly. If she thinks she's losing money, she may try to take reputation instead. That hit me harder than the theft for a second. Because reputations don't have a bank alert. They just bleed. Erin advised me to prepare a statement, nothing dramatic, nothing personal. Just a clean line that could be used with HR, family, mutual friends if necessary. "Vanessa and I are separating. Please respect privacy." That was it. No accusations. No details. Just a boundary. I wrote it down. Saved it. Then Cole called. He said the investigator had accessed footage from a strip mall near our house, where the mailbox rental address was. He couldn't show it to me yet, but he described it enough. Matt. Going in and out. Vanessa with him, twice. They weren't hiding. They were building. Cole asked if I had any cameras at home. I did. A doorbell cam and 2 indoor cameras we used when we traveled. Vanessa had insisted on them, ironically, for safety. I realized I still had access because the account was under my email. I opened the app. The last few days were mostly quiet. But there, yesterday afternoon, was a clip that made my chest compress. Matt at my front door. Not knocking politely. Testing the handle. Looking around. Then pulling out his phone like he was calling someone. Vanessa's car arrived 10 minutes later. They stood close together near my doorstep, heads angled in. Not like coworkers. Not like friends. Like partners. Then Vanessa tried the keypad. Once. Twice. 3 times. Wrong each time. Because I'd changed it. She stepped back, lifted her phone, and that was probably the moment she started calling me like a madwoman. I watched her body language shift from irritated to panicked. Then Matt pointed at the camera. At the one she'd asked for. He must have realized we were being recorded. He walked up, leaned close, and covered the lens with his hand. The feed went black. When the video returned, they were gone. That wasn't proof of theft by itself. But it was proof of intent. Proof they were scrambling. Cole told me to download everything. So I did. I saved the clips. I sent them to Aaron. Then I turned the camera app off, not because I didn't want to watch, but because I didn't want to tip them off by interacting with it too much. That afternoon, my sister called me. I hadn't told her anything yet. She said Vanessa had called her, crying, apparently, and told her I was acting unstable and had abandoned her. Unstable. Abandoned. Vanessa was laying groundwork. I could almost hear Aaron's voice in my head, reputation. I kept my response simple. I told my sister we were separating and I'd explain later. Then I texted that same sentence to my mother, preemptively. It felt surreal. Like I was watching someone else's life. And then, right as the sun started to dip, I got another message from an unknown number. This one wasn't, "Where are you?" This one was direct. It said, "If you don't come home, you'll force our hand." Our. Again. I forwarded it to Aaron and Cole. Cole replied, "Good. Keep everything." I went down to the beach that night and sat alone. People nearby were laughing. Someone played music from a speaker. The sky was purple and soft like a painting. And I felt this strange split inside me. Part of me was devastated. For years. 2 years of marriage. The person I slept beside every night had been building a second life right under my nose. Another part of me felt clear. Because I finally understood something that I'd missed for too long. This wasn't about love. It was about access. Vanessa didn't just betray me with my friend. She betrayed me with my life. The next morning, everything accelerated. Raphael emailed me early. Blue Mesa had submitted an urgent invoice with a note attached, claiming services were completed and payment needed to be rerouted due to fraud activity on their old account. The timing was almost funny. They were trying to steal in the name of being stolen from. Sonia confirmed someone attempted to override the hold. And then she said the sentence that made my blood go ice cold. They used your credentials. Not Matt's. Not an admin account. Mine. Someone had tried to log in as me and push the change through, hoping it would look legitimate. I asked her how. She paused. Then she said, carefully, "They knew your password." Of course they did. Vanessa had known it. She'd known it for years. I realized, in that moment, that my wife wasn't just cheating. She'd been wearing my identity like a mask. Cole called right after. He said, "This is good for us. It's also the moment they might do something stupid." Then he asked me a question I didn't expect. "Are you sure Vanessa is the one driving this?" I started to say yes. Then I stopped. Because the truth was, I'd been assuming Matt was the predator and Vanessa was the weak link. But Vanessa was the one using our home network. Vanessa was the one creating forwarding rules. Vanessa was the one calling everyone I knew. Vanessa wasn't just involved. She was steering. I told Cole that. There was silence on the line for a second. Then he said, "Okay. Then here's what we do next." He said they were ready to move, legally. Freeze things. Notify authorities if necessary. Separate business theft from divorce. He said we could do it without warning them. Without drama. Then he added one final piece. "If you want this clean, you come home on your terms. Not theirs. And you don't go back to that house alone." I looked at the ocean outside my window. I thought about my front door being tested. My camera being covered. Their threats. And I realized the vacation was only half the revenge. The other half was what was waiting back home. Because while I'd been sitting in paradise, Vanessa and Matt had been digging their own grave, on camera, in logs, in invoices. They thought the missed calls would pull me back into the mess. They didn't understand I'd already stepped out. And now, there was one last thing I needed before I returned. Proof that would end this permanently. Then, that afternoon, Sonia sent me a final alert, one she marked, critical. They just scheduled a wire transfer attempt for tomorrow morning. It's set to move everything we flagged. Everything. Not just a little. They were going for the full sweep. Which meant tomorrow was the day. And tomorrow, I wouldn't be on the beach. I'd be back in America. Standing right in front of the people who thought they could rob me and smile at me in the same breath. I flew back the next night. Not to my house. To a hotel 10 minutes away, arranged through Aaron. Quiet. Under my name only. No shared accounts. Cole met me in the lobby. He was older than I expected, early 50s, calm eyes, a posture that said he didn't get surprised easily. He handed me a folder. Inside were printouts, vendor histories, access logs, the forwarding rule record, the attempted routing change, screenshots of the messages, and still frames pulled from my own doorbell camera. It looked like a boring stack of paper. It was actually a trap they'd built themselves. Cole told me the plan. In the morning, Sonia would let the wire transfer attempt proceed just far enough to record the action, then stop it and lock the system. Raphael would be ready to document the fraud attempt as it happened. Aaron would file emergency motions for separation of finances and a protective order if needed. And I would not confront Vanessa alone. Instead, I'd meet her somewhere public, with my lawyer present, and with the evidence ready. Not to yell. To end it. At 7:58 a.m., Sonia texted, "They're logging in." At 8:03, routing change attempt initiated. At 8:05, "They're pushing the wire." I stared at my phone like it was a heartbeat monitor. At 8:06, Sonia sent, "Captured. Stopped. Accounts locked." Then, "IT is pulling device fingerprints now." Cole nodded once. Like this was just a checkbox. He said, "Now we move." We didn't go to my house first. That mattered. Because the house was emotion. The house was where she could cry, throw accusations, reach for familiar tools. We met at a coffee shop near a business district, bright, open, cameras overhead, people around. Aaron sat with me. Vanessa walked in 10 minutes late, wearing sunglasses inside like she was trying to hide the shape of her panic. Her posture was wrong. Too stiff. Too alert. She didn't look like someone who'd been abandoned. She looked like someone waiting for police lights. When she saw Aaron, she froze for half a step. Then she recovered and sat down like she was doing me a favor. She didn't apologize. She didn't ask if I was okay. She started with accusation, indirect, polished, like she'd practiced it with someone. She said I'd been acting unpredictable. That she'd been worried. That blocking her had been cruel. Aaron didn't react. Aaron slid the folder onto the table. Vanessa's hands moved toward it instinctively, like she wanted to control it. Aaron stopped her with 2 fingers. "Don't," Aaron said, calm and flat. Vanessa's mouth tightened. Aaron began listing facts, not feelings. She described the affair evidence. The vendor fraud. The email forwarding rule. The access log from my home IP. The attempted wire transfer that morning. Vanessa's face shifted in tiny pieces. At first, denial. Then, calculation. Then, finally, anger. She looked at me like I'd betrayed her. And that was almost the funniest part of the entire thing. She tried to redirect, tried to paint Matt as the manipulator, tried to imply it was complicated, tried to suggest she'd been scared. Aaron didn't bite. Aaron asked one simple question. "Why did you cover the camera lens at the front door?" Vanessa blinked like she hadn't expected that detail. And that blink told me everything. Because you can talk your way out of a rumor. You can't talk your way out of footage. Vanessa's composure cracked. She asked what I wanted. Not, "Can we fix this?" Not, "I'm sorry." What I wanted. I leaned forward. My voice surprised me with how steady it was. I told her she would move out of the house immediately. That the locks were already changed. That her access to accounts was already removed. That all communication would go through Aaron. Vanessa's jaw clenched. She asked where she was supposed to go. I told her that wasn't my problem anymore. And then Aaron delivered the final line like a closing argument. Also, law enforcement will be receiving documentation today regarding the attempted wire transfer and vendor fraud. If you cooperate fully, that will be noted. Cooperate. Vanessa's sunglasses came off. Her eyes were sharp now. She didn't plead. She didn't cry. She looked cornered. Like an animal deciding whether to bite. She stood up abruptly, knocking her chair back, and hissed something under her breath that I won't repeat. Then she walked out. I didn't chase her. I didn't need closure from her mouth. I already had it in writing. On camera. In logs. Outside, Cole waited near the entrance. He'd been watching discreetly. He nodded at me and said, "Good. Now we finish." We drove to my office building. Not for drama. For documentation. Sonia met us there with a final report. Device fingerprints matched logins coming from Vanessa's laptop and Matt's phone on different occasions. Matt, in other words, hadn't just been the guy in the pictures. He'd been inside my systems. Inside my work. Inside my money. At noon, Aaron filed. By the afternoon, the first official notices were sent. And here's the twist, the wow factor that I didn't see coming until it unfolded. Matt wasn't just my friend. Matt had been playing Vanessa too. Cole's investigator uncovered that Matt had a second girlfriend in another state, someone he'd used the exact same consulting vendor setup with before. Vanessa wasn't his partner. She was his access point. The reason he'd pushed her to escalate and steal bigger wasn't love or loyalty. It was desperation. Because he was already under scrutiny from a previous mess, and he needed money fast. Which meant Vanessa hadn't just betrayed me. She'd betrayed me for a man who was also betraying her. And when she realized that, she did exactly what people do when their world collapses. She tried to burn everything down. That night, she showed up at the house. The doorbell camera caught it, her face tight with fury, Matt's car parked across the street. But she couldn't get in. She stood there for a long time, punching in the old code like it might magically work if she tried hard enough. Then she started calling. Again. And this time, it wasn't 25 missed calls. It was dozens. She called my mother. My sister. One of my coworkers. She emailed Erin. She emailed me. Threats. Bargains. Accusations. All the stages of losing. I didn't answer. Because the best revenge wasn't me yelling back. It was her shouting into a locked door. A week later, Matt was fired. Not because I stormed into HR with a dramatic speech. Because Sonia and Raphael had evidence strong enough that the company's hands were tied. The theft attempt that morning, captured and documented, was the nail. And then, quietly, the next domino fell. Matt was arrested. Not in a cinematic way. Not on a stage. Just stopped. Held accountable. The vendor fraud wasn't a rumor anymore. It was a case. Vanessa didn't go to jail. Not immediately. Erin negotiated, and Vanessa cooperated, handed over what she knew, admitted what she'd done, and agreed to terms that protected my business and ended the marriage cleanly. She moved out. She lost the house. She lost access. She lost the story she'd been trying to write about me. And months later, when the divorce finalized, it felt less like heartbreak and more like surgery, painful, but necessary. I went back to Hawaii again after it was over. Same beach. Same warm sand. Different person. I sat there with my phone in my hand, staring at the ocean. No missed calls. No panic. No lies buzzing in my pocket. And I realized something that still makes me exhale through a small, bitter smile. The best revenge wasn't the trip. It wasn't ignoring the calls. It wasn't even watching them get caught. The best revenge was this. I didn't beg to be loved by people who were using me. I made one clean decision, changed every lock they thought they owned, and walked away while they were still reaching for the handle. Because while I was on that beach the first time, Vanessa thought she was losing her husband. What she was really losing was control.